Hello! Before we start, I wanted to make a little note. As you will probably notice as you will be listening to this chapter, this podcast had been recorded a while ago and the most recent developments in the royal family has not been updated in it. And we decided to publish it anyway because apart from the person of monarch, nothing has changed and all the points we are making are as valid as they were before. So that's all for the note and enjoy the next chapter of
You are not so great, Britain.
Chapter 3. Britain is world-leading democracy. Or is it?
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of You're Not So Great Britain. I'm Elisę, I'm speaking from Italy, and here with me is Tomasz. Hi Tomasz.
Hi, I'm Tomasz and I'm speaking from Glasgow. Elisę, I wanted to start with this a tweet I've seen recently from one of the Scottish Tories, in which he was outraged how the Green don't want to celebrate the Queen's Jubilee. And he said something along the lines that if I was invited to celebrate long-standing service of President of Ireland or President of France, even though I'm a monarchist, I would respect that and I would celebrate that. And that got me thinking that he doesn't really get a point, because to celebrate some long-standing service of the president, he would have to go to Belarus or to Russia, because those are the only two countries in Europe that have long-standing presidents.
Yeah.
And I wonder what would be the thing that connects Britain and those countries. And I would risk a thesis that those countries have in common one thing: they are not democracies. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. This is actually something that when I lived in the UK and, I really thought about it, or I saw all the pomp, all the ceremonials of monarchy, or all the, really kitsch memorabilia of the royal family, always made me think, I can't believe this country is a monarchy. I can't believe there are still monarchies around.
Yeah. I've seen again on Twitter today. Someone tweeted how Prince, what his name, Prince William or whatever, was selling big issue with some homeless person. And if you read the answers to that tweet, it's just terrible. People are like, "Oh, he will be such a great king. He so much cares about all those poor people." And come on, he's like bloody rich person who lives of taxpayers' money, and he just goes and does some empty gesture for 15 minutes and suddenly he's the greatest helper of the poor. But don't even get me started on that. Let's start with the fact that head of state in Britain is someone whose mandate to do that job is that she was popped out from a vagina of some lady who was married to a king, who was born from some other person in power, and so on and so forth. Turtles all the way down to the place when in history when this one guy in the castle had a stronger army than that other guy in the castle, and he slaughtered all his people and becomes like the guy in charge.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. And I also kind of put myself in their shoes, because they are disgustingly rich and privileged. But I also find it interesting that they don't really have a choice. And okay, they have a lot of wealth, a lot of privileges, but still, from my point of view, I don't think I would like to switch places with them. I wouldn't like to be in their position. And I also find it really interesting that they don't really have a choice, or when they do decide to make a choice, like, oh, I don't remember his name, the king who abdicated at the beginning of the 20th century, or even the one of the princes who recently allegedly left the royal family, is considered like a big scandal. And they're saying, oh, they are, stepping down from their responsibility, they are giving up on their people. They're giving up on the service. First, what service? I mean, what do they do? What do they do?
Exactly. It's like they are allegedly irreplaceable.
Yeah.
They cannot be replaced allegedly.
And also, I
And
mean, it's a service that they didn't even choose. I mean, maybe they would have chosen it anyway because I'm sure it comes with a few benefits. But
yeah,
I find it really weird that there's not even a choice in the
yeah.
matter.
But let me pick it. I see two problems here in what you're saying. First, I would not agree with you that they don't have a choice. They are still free people. They could say, okay, this whole royal thing is stupid. We are abdicating. Our final order as a king is to make this country a republic, and we will just retrieve to our favorite castle in Scotland, and we'll live of the person's interest from all this wealth we accommodated for centuries, and we'll be happy, and you have your country ruled properly by someone who is elected.
Yeah,
So
yeah. In
I would say
theory,
they don't have a choice in that way, that they can't do it if they want to keep all these privileges. But also I think maybe that's what you're getting at. They are like born into it, they are like raised into it, they think that this is the way it should be done. They just so detached from normal life that they cannot imagine that it's utterly stupid.
yeah, yeah. But also, I mean, imagine they could do that, yes. But I imagine the uproar that there would be, not just in the maybe aristocratic circles, but I think even among normal people. And that's one of the things that baffles me too, is how much normal folks love these privileged people who live a life of luxury and wealth, whereas they have to struggle to get to the end of the month. It's really bad.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really get it. Like Britons see like the queen as like the mother of the nation, or maybe a grandma of the nation, and she's so allegedly caring for them. She's like bloody one of the richest persons in this country, if not in Europe. And those ordinary people like spending their last available money during this time of crisis for like some silly balloons and posters and little flags to celebrate that she's in power for 70 years. It's ridiculous. If my mother was like having this privilege and luxury lifestyle while her kids were starving, well, that's hardly a good mother, isn't it?
Yeah,
And yet here it's like it's something that we cannot question. See, recently we see all these discussions after all this oligarch millionaires went to space, like Elon Musk is playing with the rockets, or Jeff Bezos, or what's that Virgin guy,
yeah,
Richard Branson.
yeah.
And people say like those guys have so much money, they could single-handed end like poverty in this country, and yet they waste money to play astronauts. What dicks they are. And everyone is okay with that, but I don't think we could even tell that about the queen, because there's probably some law that would end us in court for like offending the monarchy or something. But what is the difference about the situation, except from the fact that they really, maybe in questionable ways, but they made their money themselves,
Mm.
while those guys were born into it, and they are like taking taxes from people in Cornwall and Lancaster or whatever. It's beyond me that it's like a Stockholm syndrome. I think that you can think that the queen is your loving mother when actually she just lives at your expense and don't really give a flying flamingo, as the classic would say, about your problems, your rising cost of lives and everything. And that brings me to that other thing you mentioned, that she's like she's
Irreplaceable.
that's yeah, exactly. That's the word I'm trying to pronounce. Is it really the fact that she cannot be replaced? Recently, I don't know if you've seen that. It was hilarious. A crown arrived to the parliament in the convoy of some like vintage Rolls Royces, and then Prince Charles, dressed like Michael Jackson, this ridiculous uniform. He read the letter from his mom which wasn't even written by her mom because it was written by the prime minister. And in this letter was about how like the nation is struggling with cost of living, and that was read by the guy sitting on the golden throne next to a crown. So I don't think you cannot be replaced if you can be replaced by a hat, basically.
Yeah.
Or during the recent Jubilee celebrations, there was this golden carriage driving, and it was a hologram of the Queen waving to people, and people were waving back at it, and they were very excited. If you can be replaced by a hat and your son reading a letter written by someone else or by the hologram, then I don't think you're really that I don't know what's today.
Yeah,
You
it
can
can
be
be
replaced.
replaced.
That's my point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Now, to be honest, I will admit that what I read quite often is, although I don't know how much, to which extent I agree with this. Lots of people say, well, but being the colorful characters they are, with all this ceremonial and all this pomp and luxury, it's really more money that they bring in, thanks to all the memorabilia that tourists buy and tourists visiting their their castles and such. But to be honest, I mean, the castles and everything else would still be there regardless.
Exactly. Look at Versailles or at Louvre. You can go there and you can see all this ancient furnishing, and Louvre is one of the most famous museums
Yeah,
in Europe now, if
yeah, you
not in the
don't
world.
really need a royal family to visit a beautiful castle.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, you don't go there to see the royal family. In fact, they are kept well away from the public for obvious reasons.
Exactly. They are not the baboons in the zoo that you go and throw carrots at them.
Exactly.
They are well hidden. They are protecting their privacy. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But even if it's such a great attraction, then I got this idea. Let them be, but cut all the funds from the states to them. Let them just, keep themselves running from the tickets. If tourists are so keen to see them, let's just charge tourists for seeing them, and that will keep the problem with royal family. They can be put in some place as a tourist attraction, theme park, and let the country.
So they would basically become like baboons in a zoo. It's a very interesting concept.
Well, I guess so, yeah. But that's the point. How it's that profitable to tourism? I would argue it's the opposite. We've been together to Prague. You remember?
Yeah.
We were watching those guards changing in front of the presidential castle, and they were all these city walks and very, you know how it is.
Yeah.
It was exactly as it's in front of the Buckingham Palace, except they didn't have these stupid furry hats. And then after we watched that, we could get inside and see everything, which is not possible in Buckingham Palace because there's this huge metal gate and you cannot go inside. So I would say like Prague Castle is better for tourism
Yeah.
than Buckingham Palace, because you got the same attractions outside and yet you can buy a ticket and go inside still. So
Yeah. But still, I think the thing that annoys me the most about this whole royal family, it's not even okay. It's also the stark contrast between the luxury and the privilege they live in, and how detached they are from the people they supposedly should guide and care about. But it's more like the hypocrisy of saying, oh, they are neutral, they don't have any influence on the politics because they respect the democratic process, when I mean a lot of indications suggest that it's not entirely so. Like apparently I was reading an article from February last year, and according to this article, the Queen lobbied for a change in law that would basically hide her private wealth from the public. So she's not completely neutral, is she?
of course, and she was lobbied for some environmental laws in Scotland so they don't apply to her estates, or she was lobbying something about equal opportunities law so she doesn't have to employ color people in the Buckingham Palace as servants, or they are exempt from this Right to Information Act, Freedom of Information
Mm.
Act. You know, people know that, and they yet praise her for that. I've been listening to some podcasts from BBC recently about how Queen is the great diplomat, and this journalist was repeating that several times in this podcast, that Queen is not allowed to be engaged in politics, and yet she's brilliant because she does so much by some like shoddy backstage deals and using her private connections. So what they literally say that Queen is great because she's doing what she's not supposed to
Yeah,
do,
yeah,
and yet they still use that to praise her.
yeah.
I don't get
It's
it.
that's shady at best.
Exactly, yeah. But see, that's the other thing, that she's not elected, and she's not supposed to have this power, and yet she has some power. But you know, I'm not going into like legal framework of Britain, because it's of course too complicated, and even the wisest lawyers don't know every details, and there are some discussions about that. But to be frank, like in this basic, the most basic level, like king's supposed to be the real ruler of the country, and he was supposed to do whatever he wants, like chop the heads of people he doesn't like, and wage wars and whatever. And then the powers of the royal family were carved and carved and carved and carved. And now I think there's this deal, like, you pretend you don't have any powers, and we allow you to be and live your lavish lifestyle. And it's like, it's if it's they keep each other in the check, because if the royal family really wanted to use some of their prerogatives, and if they really wanted to have some powers, they will be kicked out overnight. People would be really angry if they tried to actually rule the country. So what's the point of this position?
Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
know.
at the end of the day, if they have no real power or influence over politics, which is not entirely true, but let's pretend it is, and
Hmm.
in exchange for that, they live this lavish lifestyle. I mean, at the end of the day, what is the point of them then? It's just
Yeah.
it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, that's right. If they are really doing nothing, then what's the point? There are though some people who are also unelected, and they yet do something. And I'm thinking about Lords, the upper chamber of the British Parliament.
Yeah.
And they are also some hereditary lords, or at least they used to be, and they are not elected, they're appointed, and they are usually either buddies of the prime ministers, or some like rich families, or bishops from mostly Church of Anglican Church,
Yeah.
but also other faiths. And I think this is kind of like a corruption thing, that you need to brown your nose up to like the ruling party, and then maybe the prime minister puts you up for the queen to be appointed as lord.
Yeah, no, I was just about to say that if you think about it, the whole British system is really so rooted in privilege, because
Hmm.
I mean, these are hereditary peers whose families, date back to God knows when, and they've always been living in privilege and wealth, and they, were always side to side with the royals. And I don't think any, common folk could almost any common folk could ever get get where they are. And it's very archaic. It sounds like such an archaic system. Like I can imagine, the king knighting a noble, an aristocrat in his circle. It's a very medieval kind of idea.
And also, they some say, oh, it's good that they are not elected because they are not like engaged in the politics, and they can be impartial. But first of all, they are not impartial. They are partial to themselves
Of
mostly. they
course.
they will do everything to ensure their privileges. But also, that they are not engaged in politics, that means there's no scrutiny over them. Like, people can say nothing about if they're happy with their work or not. They don't even need to go and turn up for work. They just come there as they please. And of course, I guess some amongst them really wants to do something good, and they are like really trying hard and do actual work. But because this is not a democratic institution, or like based on merits. It's well, it is in theory, but we all know how it looks. It's I don't see any advantages of that over some senate
Mm.
or other kind of parliament where people are invited, or like a bunch of experts, say, like they would be like university professors and experts, and they will be appointed for certain times or even to certain tasks. I could imagine like the chamber of parliament like that, but just some guys who are rich and no prime
Yeah,
minister.
who just
Not
happen
really.
to have been very rich for generations. That's
Hmm.
yeah, it just seems wrong. Also because, yeah, as you said, they are not impartial. I mean, to have an impartial point of view in the Chamber of Lords, then maybe you should put together people of different extractions, different origins, and then together they maybe can reach an impartial point of view, but not if, for the most part, they are privileged, rich people.
Hmm.
That's not impartial.
Which is actually also the case for the Commons, which is called the Chamber of Commons. But I don't see I have anything in common with, I don't know, Jacob Rees-Mogg or Rishi Sunak, who are just extremely rich guys. I think Rishi Sunak is even richer than the Queen herself, and for them it's just a game, a play.
Yeah.
They are like playing with that, and they don't care about common people at all, because whatever they rule, whatever like Brexits and whatever it changes, it doesn't apply to them. If they limit like access to freedom to movement to the British people, it won't be them queuing in the airports in this non-EU queues. It will be the common folks, and they will be still flying their private jets and whatnot. So this is not really a representation of the common people in Britain as well. And for also one more reason, that the voting system is the first past the post system exclusively. It's not like Italy or Germany, where there are some MPs who are chosen by first past the post, but most are from proportional representation. No, every single of them is first past the post. That means, like, if you got see three candidates, one has won. Those votes that went for the other two are completely wasted. People don't have representation. Most of people in Britain, they don't have representation if in the Chamber of Commons, because there is no proportional representations in there. So what representation you have? Actually, this is funny, because I studied in Glasgow University and we had some classes on politics. We were dealing with Eastern Europe mostly and Central Europe. And we had this English professor who were asking us. First, she provided us definition what conditions country has to meet to be considered democratics. So she said like proportional representation and some system of checks and balances and the democratically elected head of state. And then whenever we had some classes with her, and she was like, give me some example of non-democratic countries, and we were all like saying Britain, and she was going mad. But this is the point. We were like with malicious compliance applying her own rules to the country we are all sitting in, and she was mad about that, because that's the very British thing, I think, because her usual answer was, but that's different,
Okay.
which is,
Different
I think,
how?
the root of British culture. Like,
Yeah.
the rules doesn't apply to us because that's different. Like, everyone has to observe the lockdown, but when Boris Johnson has his parties in the Downing Street, that's different.
That doesn't
And
apply. Yeah.
yeah, and the only country that has this first past the post electoral system is Belarus, and that's not really a democratic country either, as we already
Yeah,
established.
that
So
that says a lot. Yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, what I find really interesting is how Britain is hailed, traditionally hailed as this this greatly democratic country, where in fact democracy in the modern state started, but it's really not if you think about it.
I think it's similar to what we were talking in our NHS chapter, that it used to be great, like all this Magna Carta and all this like revolutionary ideas from hundreds of years ago. Yeah, hundreds of years ago, Britain was really in the top five most democratic countries. It was really progressive and everything, but it's stuck in the past now, and everyone overtook Britain long time ago and are way ahead of them, and they are still stuck in this like 17th century or whatever, and yet they still claim they are like world leading democracy, which,
Yeah.
let's be honest, they are not.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's very telling that you said it maybe was great a long time ago, and it's still stuck in this ancient world. Because I mean, if you see so many rituals and ceremonials, both in the royal family, both with the royals and in the Chamber of Lords, if you think about it, it is all very, it's really stuck in the past. It's like
Here.
exactly, yes. They started doing that God knows when, and because they just they seem to be very hesitant to change, that they have stayed like that, and yeah, it's. I mean, for me, it's so funny.
You brought to my mind a silly story, which is like, in theory, it's not connected, but just bear with me. I used to have a flat renting from some very nice landlords, and those ladies were visiting us, and we had those discussions. And on one occasion, we discussed how silly it is that Britain has these two separate taps for cold and hot water, which I know there are some reasons for doing that,
Yeah.
but let's not go into that. And they said, "Oh yeah, that's ridiculous. I don't know why it's that." And then we had some refurbishment of our kitchen, and they've put these two separate taps in our sink. And I said, okay, so we were just talking about that like last time when you were visiting us to see what needs to be done, and you said it's utterly stupid, and yet you've put these two separate taps in our kitchen. Why? And she said, because it was always like that.
Yeah,
And isn't that the most British thing
that
to say?
sums it up, yes. And actually, you that is funny, because that's something I often tease my boyfriend about. And he said, "Oh, but that's because once upon a time we were really, we that would have been, I think, for hygiene reasons." So he said there was a reason once upon a time, and in fact we were, really advanced for that. Yeah, you were at the time, but now things have changed.
Well, not really. I still, in the place I currently live, I still have this hot water tank
Wow.
in my cupboard, which is like kind of outdated way to heat your water, I would say. But still, there's still plenty of flats like that, which I think we could do another chapter of this podcast about housing conditions in
Yeah,
Britain and so on, because I can
absolutely.
go on about that. But let's come back to this democratic, maybe to sum it up. One of my things that annoy me the most when talking about current situation with Brexiters is when they say about this like unelected bureaucrats from Brussels,
Oh,
which is
that's
of
one of
course
my,
utter rubbish.
yeah.
But that coming from someone who's British, it's just really ridiculous, because if you look at this, Nigel Farage, even today, is still very unlikely, but we can imagine Britain rejoining the European Union. He's becoming engaging in European politics, and he's becoming a president of European Commission. It's very unlikely,
Yeah.
but it's still technically possible. I cannot imagine any way for Nigel Farage to become a king of Britain. So, what is more democratic, Britain or Brussels?
Yeah, and in the end, they don't even elect their own prime minister. So, I mean, if we're talking about unelected bureaucrats,
Yeah, it's like I think many countries don't vote for the prime ministers,
yeah, no,
but
no, Italy neither, to be honest. But it's just it makes me laugh, because I mean, they elect their own MPs, but that's all. In theory, MPs don't really have all that power. They don't. Yeah,
yeah,
they don't vote their own direct representatives.
and also they don't represent people. See, coming back to Nigel Farage, why he was so successful in European Parliament, why he had this group of his Euro MEPs, and why he was so successful as MEP for so many years, and yet his party was struggling to get hold in British Parliament, because the Euro Parliament gives people a proportional representation. If, say, 10% of people in Britain support UKIP, then 10% of British MEPs will be from UKIP.
Yeah.
While in Britain, because UKIP is like fourth biggest party, they have virtually no chance to get any hold in the parliament. And even if they manage to put 1 or 2 MPs, they have completely no influence at all onto British politics. Which I know we were to finish, but I want to add another comparison to European Union. See, Brexit, we already mentioned it. There was this referendum, and of course the majority voted slightly for it, but 2 countries of 4 were against that, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and nobody cares about that. Such thing would be impossible in European Union, because in there not only you have to have a majority of votes, but also majority of countries. The system is actually quite complicated for this very purpose, to ensure that no one is forced to submit to the stronger partners and everyone can be represented.
Yeah.
So this is another example how undemocratic the Britain is. And it's like they say, oh, it's because Britain is one country. But I always ask them, if Britain is one country, then why, if you are saying something is happening in Northwest, you mean Kendal or Lake District, and not Darnes or Isle of Skye? Why Northeast is Newcastle and not Fraserburgh or Wick?
Very good point.
Or Shetlands?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just fiction.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I had never thought it like that, but yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah. So is Britain a democracy? I don't think it is.
No,
And I
really,
think
no.
you need to be really, really desperate believer of British system to deny all those facts we just brought and still claim Britain is a democratic country, I think.
Yeah, but maybe we can, as usual, finish on a positive note and say something positive about Britain.
Yeah, well, British political system. Well, I like Scottish local elections. Well, we said that Scotland is allegedly part of Britain, so I think it counts. With this alternative transferable votes or something, that you actually go for your local elections. You don't pick one guy you like. You put numbers. I like this guy the most. If not this guy, then this guy. If not this guy, then this guy. You are actually able to express your exact likings of every of candidates. You don't have to vote tactically or whatever, because the system permits you to do that. So I like Scottish electoral system, and I like politics in Scottish Parliament. I think it's on much more professional level than what's happening in Westminster, and I like Scotland when compares to England when it comes to the politics. So I think Scotland is much more democratic than
I agree.
Britain as a whole.
I was actually going to say the same, because I mean, I've only lived briefly in Scotland, but it did strike me positively compared to my English experience.
Okay, so we have one thing only.
Yeah.
But really, it is really hard to defend Britain as a democracy. I cannot think about anything else, to be honest. So
yeah, it's really hard when it comes to the democracy in Britain. I'm really struggling. Yeah.
Okay, then. So maybe next week we'll be able to pick something more positive.
Yeah, hopefully.
And for now, thanks for listening. You are listening to You're Not So Great Britain. I'm Tomasz.
And I'm Elisa.
To the next time.
Bye.
Bye.